Hi guys, welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to talk about Alberta Immigration Nominee Program, which is also called AINP. For those of you who don't know, Alberta is one of the largest provinces in Canada with major cities like Calgary and Edmonton. Calgary is where I live and work. I will be making videos about different PNP programs available for Canada immigration, which gives you permanent residency. They will be available under a separate playlist on this channel. Now let's talk about the basics first. Provincial Nominee Program or PNP is another pathway to immigrate to Canada along with the federal skilled worker category, which is available under Express Entry. Every province has different PNP programs which are broadly categorized into two different categories. First is the Express Entry pool and second is the province's own immigration program. Now let's talk about how provincial Express Entry pool works. So when you applied under the federal skilled worker category in the Express Entry, and if your CRS is not meeting the cutoff score, your application would still be lying in the pool. But just in case any province needs people for the skill that you have based on the knock code that you mentioned while creating your profile, that province will nominate you. Once you're nominated by the province, you get 600 points over and above the CRS points that you already have, thus making your overall CRS pretty high, and that gives you the permanent residency. Now, second is province's own program. This is really complicated because Canada has 10 different provinces. Every province has their own program with different set of rules. So today in this video, I'm going to talk about one of those, which is the Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program. So under AINP, there are 4 different streams which are available. In this video, I'm going to talk about the first stream, which is the Alberta Opportunity stream. I will also be making a separate video for the second stream, which is the Alberta Express Entry stream. The third stream is for international graduate entrepreneur and the fourth stream is for self-employed farmers. Those two come under a very different category, so I'm not going to talk about those. So let's talk about the Alberta Opportunity stream. This program is for people who are already in Alberta with a valid work permit and have a full-time job offer from an Alberta employer in any of the occupations that are accepted by the Alberta government. Let's talk about the eligibility criteria for this program in detail. So the first point here is about the residency and work permit requirements. So what this means is when you submit your application to AINP and whatever time they take to assess the application, during the whole journey, you should have a valid temporary resident status in Canada, which authorizes you to work here. So basically, you should have a work permit. Now that work permit could be through a positive LMIA, which is the Labor Market Impact Assessment, or if you're working for a company which is exempted from LMIA. For someone who completed his or her education in Alberta, a post-graduation work permit would also be considered for this program. Now, if you have any of these 3 status in Canada, that makes you ineligible for this program. So the first one is if you are a refugee claimant. Second is if you are a temporary resident living or working in any other province except Alberta. Third is foreign nationals living or working in Canada who do not have a temporary resident status. Now let's talk about the occupation requirements for Alberta Opportunity stream. Now this is the trickiest part because AINP doesn't have a list of eligible occupations mentioned anywhere on their website, although there is a list for ineligible occupations. So it's safe to assume that if you're working in a knock code which is outside of the ineligible occupations, that particular knock code or your work experience will be considered for this stream. If someone is still unsure if their occupation is on the ineligible list, they can always call the Alberta Information Service or email them as well. For the post-graduation work permit holders, their occupation must also be related to the field of study they did in Alberta. So if somebody studied engineering, they should have a job in engineering as well. If they're doing a job in any other field, then they become ineligible for this particular stream. So now let's look at the language requirements for this. The language requirements were actually updated on January 1st, 2020. Now, as per the updated language requirements, if you're working in an occupation which has a knock code of 0A or B, then you need a minimum of CLB 5 for English and a minimum of NCLC 5 for French. If you're working in an occupation which has a knock code of C or D, then you need a minimum of CLB 4 for English and minimum of NCLC 4 for French. Now for the 3 particular occupations that I've highlighted, which comes under knock code 3413, the language requirement is actually higher. It changes to CLB 7 for English and NCLC 7 for French. For the English language skill, you can actually take IELTS or CELPIP. Both are acceptable. And for French, you can either take TEF or TCF. Both are acceptable as well. Now, your language test results must be less than 2 years old at the time you submit your application for AINP. This is the same requirement that we have for federal skilled worker category. Now, if I talk about CELPIP, CLB level 5 means 5 bands in each modules, which is reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And if I talk about IELTS, CLB 5 means 4 bands in reading module and 5 in the other 3, which is writing, listening, and speaking, which is pretty easy to achieve. Now let's talk about the education requirements. The education requirements are actually fairly simple for this program. So it says that you should have completed a minimum of high school education in your country of origin, which is actually going to change starting next year, January 1st. Now I'm not sure what are the exact standards because it's not defined anywhere, but I'm pretty much sure that whatever education you have as a high school will be acceptable. For the post-graduation work permit holders, their credentials must be issued by an Alberta advanced education institution, and there are some other requirements as well, which you see on the screen right now. Now let's look at the work experience requirements. So the most important thing here is your current occupation must also match with your work experience at the time you submit your application or during the time AINP is actually assessing your application. So in other words, if you were working in a particular knock code when you submitted the application, and later if you started working in another knock code in some other occupation, that change will make you ineligible for this particular stream. So throughout your whole journey, when you submit your application and by the time AINP assesses your application, you should be working in the same occupation in the same knock code. Now, if I look at the first requirement for eligible work experience, it states that when you submit your application to AINP, within the last 18 months, you should have a minimum of 12 months full-time work experience in current occupation in Alberta. Now, if you don't have work experience in Alberta, but you do have work experience in another province within Canada, then also you're eligible for this program, but that work experience should be a full-time work experience with a minimum of 24 months. Now, if you don't have work experience in Canada, your foreign work experience would also count for this program. Again, that should be a full-time work experience and a minimum of 24 months within the last 30 months. This 24 months of full-time work experience can be a combination of your work experience gained in Alberta, or it could be outside Alberta or outside Canada as well. For the post-graduation work permit holders, they require a minimum of 6 months of full-time work experience in the current occupation within Alberta in the last 18 months. And there are some other requirements as well for them. I'm not going to deep dive into that, but it's clearly visible for you guys to read on the screen. Now let's talk about the job offer requirement. So for the job offers, it should be a full-time work defined as a minimum of 30 hours per week, and your job offer should be an employment for 12 months or more. You should be working in your current occupation. So what it means is when you select a knock code, the current job offer that you have should match with that knock code. And also, if I talk about the wages and benefits, it should either meet or exceed the requirements set out in your work permit or in your LMIA. If you're LMIA exempt, you should either meet or exceed the lowest starting wage that is defined for your occupation in Alberta. There is a link I will post. You can go and check what is the minimum wage for your knock code in Alberta for that. If you're working part-time, casual, or are a seasonal employee, then you're not eligible for this particular stream. You shouldn't be an independent contractor, business owner, or a temporary agency worker. Also, the employees have to work on premises in Alberta. So if you're working for a company which is based out of Alberta, but you are actually working remotely or telecommunicating, that makes you ineligible for the program. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there were a few changes made for this program in the past. Those were related to language requirements, and starting January 1st, 2021, there will be changes for the education requirements as well. So the minimum high school equivalent to Alberta standard is what they need now. So all the applications for AINP used to be paper-based applications, which is again another hassle, but they changed the requirement on October 1st, 2020. Now all the applications are online. So to apply to the Alberta Opportunity stream, you have to go to the AINP portal. I will post a link for that on the video description. Once you go to the portal, you need to create your Alberta Digital ID account, which is fairly simple. The instructions are also available on how to create that. Once you create your account and you log in, then you need to submit all the required documents which are there. There is a checklist of documents available as well, which is pretty helpful. So what you see on the screen right now is the checklist that I'm talking about. I'm also going to post a link for this one in the video description. Now, because they moved the system online, there is now an application fee of $500, which applies when you go ahead and submit your application. Now, this application fee is non-refundable. So if in case your application is not accepted by the Alberta government, you will not get a refund for the money that you paid. Now, after you pay the required fee and apply to the program, you get a file number which is available on the My Applications page on the online portal. During the time your application is being assessed by AINP, if there are any changes, for example, in your employment status, your contact information, or anything similar, you need to notify AINP. There are different forms available based on the change that happened. So you need to fill out the form and then let AINP know. Just in case additional information is needed to process your application, and AINP program officer can contact you via email or phone. Once there is a decision on your application, if it's approved or declined, you will be notified via email. If the application gets approved, you become a provincial nominee and you get a nomination package via email. If your application is denied, you can also request for a reconsideration. If you think that there's something wrong that happened on the visa officer's side, you can definitely ask for a reconsideration, but there's a service fee of $100 on that. Now, if your application was approved for AINP, you must apply to IRCC as soon as possible. The nomination that they send is actually valid for 6 months, and you can extend that as well, but there's a $100 fee if you need extension in any case. Now, once you apply to IRCC, which is basically the federal government system, you get a IRCC file number and an acknowledgement of receipt. This is important in case you want to extend your work permit, so you can use your acknowledgement of receipt, which tells the government that you've already applied for a PR, and if the decision is pending, you can actually stay in Canada. Now, there's a complete checklist that's available when you have to apply on the IRCC website. Because we would be applying under the PNP, so we need to follow the PNP column on the checklist. I will have it displayed on the screen for your reference, and will also post a link for that. Now, the process to apply to IRCC is actually sending the physical copy of your application to their address in Sydney, Nova Scotia, Canada. That's what you see right now on the screen. Once your application is received, IRCC will determine if the application is complete, and if there's anything else needed, they will reach out to you, and you would also be given a file number. If the application is approved, then you will be asked for medicals. The important tip to note here is do not go for medical unless IRCC actually requests you to get one. Just in case any information changes in between, for example, if you change your address, your phone number, or your employment, you need to inform both AINP and IRCC as well. Now, let's talk about a situation where you have actually got the nomination from AINP and you have applied to IRCC for PR, but your application is still in progress. And in the meantime, your work permit is going to expire. So there are 4 different ways that you can actually use to extend the work permit depending upon your situation. AINP recommends option 1, 2, 3. So option 1 is you can extend it with the LMIA. The detailed process is on the website. Option 2 is for people who have LMIA exemption, for example, people who move within the company from one country to another. And then the option 3 is actually renewing the work permit by applying for another work permit, which is called a bridging open work permit. I would not deep dive into the details, but in case you need information on that, everything is mentioned on the AINP, which is the Alberta government website. And now, if options 1, 2, 3 don't work for you for some reason, you can choose the option 4, which is getting a support letter from AINP. Again, the AINP website has complete details of how to request a letter of support, how to submit the request, how to pay the fee. There is a $100 service fee for requesting this letter as well. Now, let's talk about the processing times for Alberta Opportunity Stream. It's not like mentioned officially anywhere on the Alberta website, but usually takes about 6 to 7 months for them to get you the nomination. It does talk about the current number of applications they have in their pool. So for the Alberta Opportunity Stream, currently they have 1775 applications. This data is as of October 27th, 2020. And in the year 2020, they have issued total nominations of 3,837, which is 3,837. But this number includes both the Alberta Express Entry and the Alberta Opportunity Stream as well. So I hope I was able to explain how the Alberta Opportunity Stream works under AINP. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to reach out in the comments. I will try my best to answer. And as I mentioned in the starting of the video, I will be posting another video for the Alberta Express Entry pool, which also falls under AINP. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to the channel. Please do subscribe if you haven't done that yet.